Hello and welcome to Brand X Reviews. So today is the 6th of July 2026. It is Sylvester Stallone's 80th birthday. So I wanted to do something to celebrate the guy because obviously he's an actor. He's just somebody who pretends to be other people in his movies. But I think he's more than that. He's a person who has given a lot of inspiration to a lot of people in all the right ways as well with his movies. He's not just an actor, he's a writer, he's a director, he's produced films as well. And like I say, his legacy is much larger than not just what other actors are, but guys that are in the action genre as well. So just little things as well, particularly growing up watching his movies and being heavily inspired by them. I wasn't somebody who looked after myself as a kid, like physically, but I remember I did used to kind of defeat some of my own limitations that I had at the time. I used to go out running, and at the time I used to have a Walkman. I would listen to this cassette here, Rocky story. So this is something I've kept since back in the day. In fact, when I was in Philadelphia last year, I was running up the Rocky steps with this in my hands.
He likes you. He wants to fight you.
Hey, now when you walk into the ring for the #1 heavyweight of the world, you'll be ready. You're gonna eat lightning and you're gonna trap thunder. You're gonna become a very dangerous fighter.
So yeah, that was something, like I say, there was a bit of a rite of passage, definitely something off the bucket list there as well. In fact, when I went, I did actually keep a bit of one of the steps as well. I got this as well, so I have a piece of the Rocky steps with me. Doesn't matter if it wasn't part of the step that was used when the original was filmed. Doesn't matter if it was in the exact quadrant of the steps that he ran up. It's part of the Rocky steps, and that's awesome. So anyway, prattling on a little bit now. Let's talk about the man himself. Let's talk about his legacy and why he's so special. And we'll cut back and we're going to take some questions from our viewers as well, because we did a mailbag request for this as well. So let's do this anyway. For many people, Sylvester Stallone is the face of 1980s action cinema. Muscles, explosions, and unforgettable movie quotes. But reducing his career to that stereotype overlooks one of Hollywood's most remarkable success stories. Stallone didn't just play iconic characters, he created a lot of them, wrote them, and turned them into cultural symbols that have endured for nearly 5 decades. Before the fame, Stallone's journey was anything but glamorous. Struggling to find acting work in the early 1970s, he faced constant rejection because of his distinctive speech and appearance caused by complications during his birth. Rather than giving up, he turned to writing, refusing to wait for someone else to give him a chance. That determination would change movie history. In 1976, everything changed with Rocky. Inspired by a real-life boxing match, Stallone wrote the screenplay in just a few days and famously refused to sell it unless he was cast as the lead. It was a gamble that paid off. The film became a global phenomenon, won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and earned Stallone Oscar nominations for both Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay, an incredible rare achievement for someone who was virtually unknown just months before. But Rocky wasn't just a sports movie, it was a story about resilience, self-belief, and proving your worth against impossible odds. Those themes resonated with audiences around the world, and Rocky Balboa became one of cinema's greatest underdog heroes. Then came another legend. In 1982, Stallone introduced audiences to John Rambo in First Blood, while later sequels leaned heavily into explosive action. The original film was surprisingly emotional. It explored trauma, isolation, and the struggles faced by returning Vietnam veterans. Over time, Rambo evolved into one of the defining action heroes of the 1980s, helping shape the action genre for decades to come. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Stallone became one of Hollywood's biggest box office stars with films like Cobra, Cliffhanger, Demolition Man, and so on. Alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, he defined an era when larger-than-life action heroes dominated cinema. course, not every film was a success. Stallone's career saw its share of commercial and critical disappointments and failures. But what separates him from many of his contemporaries is his ability to reinvent himself. In 1997, he surprised audiences with his understated performance in Copland, proving that he had dynamic range beyond action movies. Years later, he revived Rocky in Rocky Balboa, giving the character a heartfelt and mature farewell that many believed surpassed expectations. Then came Creed, where Stallone returned not as the fighter but as the mentor. His emotional performance earned him a Golden Globe and another Academy Award nomination, introducing Rocky to an entirely new generation. Stallone also celebrated the action genre itself with The Expendables, assembling some of the biggest action stars of all time into one franchise. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was a tribute to the era that he helped create. Perhaps Stallone's greatest legacy isn't any single film, it's the themes that connect nearly all of his work: perseverance, redemption, self-improvement. We talked a little bit about this recently, covering one of his books to do with health and fitness. Whether it's Rocky climbing the museum steps, Rambo confronting his past, or an aging boxer stepping back into the ring, Stallone's characters remind us that true victory isn't always about winning, it's about refusing to quit. Today, his influence can be seen in countless actors, filmmakers and sports dramas that continue to draw inspiration from the blueprint that he established. Few performers have created even one iconic character. Stallone created at least two, and both remain instantly recognisable around the world. His career has spanned more than 5 decades, survived changing trends, industry shifts and personal setbacks. Through it all, Sylvester Stallone has remained something increasingly rare in Hollywood, a true movie icon whose greatest role may have been writing his own story. And that's why Sylvester Stallone's legacy isn't simply that he made great action movies, it's that he proved determination, creativity and resilience can transform an underdog into a legend. So as I say, it's something that a lot of people can relate to because Stallone did a lot of movies where he was not just an action star, but he was very relatable. So a lot of everyman type characters, such as John McClane and so on, from Die Hard, could kind of get on the same wavelength as this, which I think is what's good about the action genre. There's many kind of sub-genres, whether it's martial arts or whatever. Stallone was definitely top of the game with that back in the day, and I think it's just one of those things where you get people like this around very rarely, especially nowadays, and they just kind of hit a lot of different beats. So Stallone was a good writer, a good character actor, but he could also appear in what would otherwise be regarded as dumb action movies like Rambo. Certainly something that you could criticise Schwarzenegger or some of the other ones that maybe weren't quite as massive as he was. I mean, Van Damme was for a little while, and Steven Seagal and Wesley Snipes and so on. Whereas I think Stallone had really kind of nailed something in terms of resonating with people. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other aspects to a lot of those other actors where they did things that Stallone didn't. So for example, Van Damme, his backstory is amazing and his legacy had its ups and downs, but when we talk about the highs and so on, really impressive, some of the stories, and I'm sure one day we'll cover that. Same with Stallone. I mean, Schwarzenegger, whether you agree with his politics or not, it's a massive thing that he achieved with that, and also obviously his bodybuilding legacy, which was just that alone was huge. I mean, literally huge. But again, something that helped Stallone in terms of when he was getting big, like physically big, because when he did Rocky, he was a big guy, but he needed to get in really good shape later on for things like Rocky 3 and Rambo, and he actually took some of the same the same path as Schwarzenegger did, training with people like Franco Columbu and so on, to get like really lean. So a lot of these guys was definitely an element when these movies were all coming out that the tide was rising and it was raising all ships basically, which I think was a really good solid era for masculinity in movies as in terms of how it's been put out there as a positive message compared to the message you get nowadays in movies.
The Message.
So Stallone is definitely one of those that belongs on the Mount Rushmore of action stars, if there is ever going to be one. Well, there isn't, but you know what I mean, hypothetically. Something that's been said before. And I think that the legacy that he's left, as I kind of covered in the opening intro, speaks for itself. So I could waffle on and go in more detail, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through some mailbag questions that I got, because some of my audience... I put it out there and just messaged them and said, if any questions you want to cover talking about Stallone, send it through. So let's have a look at that. So this came from Adam Earnshaw. We have Lock Up or Demolition Man. I'm assuming he means which one of the two do I prefer. I would say Demolition Man, but I think to answer this question properly, I'm going to have to cut away from this and come back on camera. Bear with me. So I think that the Demolition Man movie came out at a time when the action genre, you can kind of start to see it dwindling a little bit in terms of quality, budget and so on. Nothing against the people that were in those movies like Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme and so on, but you can definitely see that they weren't doing quite as well. So you started to see Stallone after Demolition Man doing films like Assassins and The Specialist, which you started to get the feel that he was becoming more of an actor for hire, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later on. But Demolition Man was really a great one. Lock Up, I think, is an underappreciated one. I think Demolition Man gets the love it deserves. Lock Up, on the other hand, although it's not as good as Demolition Man, is definitely a good film. It's a good classic Stallone film and a new character that we've not really seen him play before. So it's one that does get overlooked quite a lot, and I'm glad that you like this film, Adam, because it's one of those, like I say, it's very sad that it's when you see a film like this and it rarely gets talked about and it's not got the kind of love and appreciation that it deserves. So hope that answers your question. Anyway, let's go back. So thank you for that one, Adam. Hope that answers your question, and remember, give my regards to Claire. So next we had some questions from Paul Cage and Ben Mortimer. Well, actually, they were going to send some questions through, and then they got a bit distracted by coming up with rude film names for Stallone films. They were very amused with themselves, but there were no questions in the end. So moving on. So Stu Blencorn. Ignore the bit about the Topher. I had a Topher sighting. We were talking about that prior to this. So my question is, Stallone's legacy is one of the legacies of our generation. Who hasn't heard of Rocky, Rambo, etc.? But in a different universe, who would you swap Sly with, and vice versa, to see him in another action hero's films? Trading careers, hypothetically. I know the obvious one is Arnie, but I would love you to consider who you'd choose and why. Interesting question. So that's actually a really good question. There's a number of specifics that instantly come to mind, quite obvious ones. Obviously, Beverly Hills Cop. He was originally supposed to be in that movie, and it actually went quite far along the production. Early stages of the production with him attached to it as the star. And obviously, I would say for the better. I would have thought. I mean, we'll never know because we're talking an alternate universe. But the movies that we got were very special. With having a comedy element to it, and Eddie Murphy as well, obviously, during his kind of golden era, really. 3 pretty solid films. Not interested in the 4th film. It's not a proper movie. It's an internet movie. But the original trilogy, really good. It would have been interesting, like I say, to go into an alternate universe and see how those films play out, because it would have been very different. It would have been a lot more gritty and grounded, and I'm sure it would have been good. Little aspects that we did get that from what would have been the Stallone movie would be from films like Cobra, because I believe that Axel Foley from Beverly Hills Cop, if it had been Stallone, was supposed to be called Axel Cobretti, whereas in the film Cobra he's called Marion Cobretti. Marion's like a nod to John Wayne or something. I think that was John Wayne's real name or something like that. So his character name is Marion Cobretti. And of course, Bridget Nielsen was in Beverly Hills Cop 2. I don't know if there's some like connection there. And there's also in Beverly Hills Cop 2, there's a bit where one of the characters opens a door and there's a poster for Cobra behind it. So there's a few little references. And there's a reference to when Rosewood in Beverly Hills Cop 2 blows up a truck with a missile launcher and somebody says, "Fuck Rambo." So there's little nods here and there that there was connective tissue between Stallone and Cobra and Beverly Hills Cop, what eventually came to be. But it would be interesting to see that. Obviously, there's another interesting theory that what would Terminator have been like if Stallone had played him. Obviously, there's a joke to that in Last Action Hero, where he goes into a movie universe, and in that universe, Terminator 2 starred Sylvester Stallone. I don't think that would have been quite as good, to be fair. Don't get me wrong, I love Stallone. I probably prefer him. Well, I do prefer him to Schwarzenegger, but I think that some strengths weren't there in Stallone's favour where they were actually for Schwarzenegger. So, but it would be interesting. It's such a good question, that, to be fair. And what I suppose what you're also asking is vice versa. What other movies of Stallone's would you like to have seen somebody else in that role? I mean, it's kind of hard to say, really. I mean, Rocky would have been interesting when you look at who was some of the producers, I believe, wanted a different act. Well, I know it's a huge story that Stallone got the role. There's a movie coming out about that, in fact, later this year. But I think it was the producers or the studio or something wanted to have a different actor, somebody with a bit more of an established legacy or reputation in the lead role as Rocky. I believe there was some talk about James Caan, which would have been interesting because he's a really good actor, and he's quite a physical presence as well. I can picture that being pretty good. Wouldn't be the same as the movie, and it wouldn't be anywhere near as special as what we've got. But it might be something more along, maybe a less dark version of something like Raging Bull, which was Robert De Niro, obviously. I kind of imagine if James Caan had have been in it, it'd have been a bit more like that, which is a great movie, but it's no Rocky, is it? So that's quite an interesting one. Can't really think of anything else. I mean, you could do this all day, I guess. I don't want to get too kind of stuck up on this, but definitely some interesting ones. In terms of like the Expendables and so on, although this probably isn't really the question you're asking, but there's some other action stars would have liked to have seen in that franchise alongside Stallone. Would have been really good if you'd have got some of the sort of martial arts people like Cynthia Rothrock maybe in it. She still could have pulled that off. Or also maybe even Steven Seagal. I know he's a bit of a bell end in real life to work with and so on. And there's reasons for that, but that would have been cool. And also if it had had Kurt Russell in it, I can't remember his name. I was trying to say Mel Gibson then. I've been watching a few Mel Gibson films. If Kurt Russell had been in that film as well, I understand he didn't want to do an ensemble movie at the time when those films were coming out. And he did some good stuff, did Kurt Russell, within those years as well. He was in like the Fast and Furious movies and Deepwater Horizon and so on, and Bone Tomahawk, I think, as well. So he did good for himself, did Kurt Russell. Maybe it was the right decision, but he still would have been cool as a fan to have seen him in that franchise. There is one other thing I can think of, actually. One other movie similar to Beverly Hills Cop, where it was supposed to have Stallone in it. Not a lot of people know this, but the original concept for Face Off was supposed to be Schwarzenegger and Stallone, and that would have been very interesting. I don't think it would have been as good. It might have been better, but just in a very different way. I don't know. I can't imagine it. But in this film that we have here, I don't think it would have been quite as good because you needed the kind of wackiness that both Travolta and Cage brought to this film. That really is the heart and soul of this movie. Without that, I can't picture Stallone and Schwarzenegger doing it. At least doing this film, it would have been a very different film, but with the same concept of swapping faces and so on. But that would be very interesting to go into an alternate universe and see what Face Off would have been like. There's quite a few films like that that have come out where they were written for different action stars. Like Speed was one that was written for Jeff Speakman, which a lot of people aren't familiar with Jeff Speakman, but he did some pretty good films, but his career was kind of short-lived, unfortunately. No fault of his own, just due to like studio politics and so on. His career kind of went nowhere, but he was really supposed to do the film Speed, and he got screwed out of it. Kind of diverging a little bit, talking about different actors, but it's one of them things. It's a very good question what you've asked there, because there's so many different variations of movies that either should have been made or just you think would have been interesting had a different actor been in there. Stallone being a good example of that, because there's a few reasons to think wouldn't he have been good in this or that, whether or not he was originally supposed to be attached to it or whether or not it was a joke, like I say in Last Action Hero, where he was in Terminator 2. So, very good question. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a very quick look at my DVD, Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray collection of Stallone films. This goes on for about 10 minutes, so if you're not too interested in this, feel free to skip 10 minutes. Right, so I'm definitely going to need a step ladders for these, because all my Stallone films are on my top shelf fitting, because he is at the top of his game. So, let's have a look. The section kind of goes from here all the way across here. So, let's have a look at what we've got. So I'm still need ladders and they're creaking a bit. I'll try to keep that to a minimum. I know it's annoying. So, we've got the Expendables. I've got the uncut version on Blu-ray, but there is also a director's cut as well, which I don't think was available in any shops that I'd ever seen. I had to get this online. I don't remember seeing this in, like, HMV, for example. Well, it is a British version. It's not like a weird import or anything, but I don't know if it's a rare one, but it is a definitive version. So, ever since this came out, I've only ever watched the director's cut. Reason I didn't get this on 4K is because the 4K of this film is a theatrical cut only, so that sucks. They didn't do that with Expendables 2 though. You can get that on 4K. I don't think there's like an extended or uncut or director's cut version of this, so this one's fine to have on 4K. Expendables 3, same issue as Expendables 1 in 4K. It's just a theatrical cut only. And this one in particular, you do want the extended edition, because you might remember when this got released, it was heavily cut down, toned down, not censored as such, but I kind of use the word censored because it's usually if there's like any violence or excessive swearing, that kind of thing. If that's been cut out, I kind of call that being censored. So it's not just like cut scenes, but it's like the actual action itself is cut out, which kind of sucks when it's an Expendables movie. So you want the extended version, so you need to get the Blu-ray, not the 4K for that. Expendables 4, there's nothing wrong with getting this in 4K. It was just a lot cheaper because I bought this fairly quickly when it came out, and it was like £25 on 4K or 10 on Blu-ray, and I wasn't too fussed at this point. Wasn't the biggest fan of Expendables 4 compared to the others, but I liked it enough. It was fine. The Rocky movies, so I've got the box set, the Blu-ray box set with 1 to 6 on there. This came out quite a few years ago. Then in more recent times, there was a 4K that was released. In fact, I still have the booklet that came with the old DVD back in 2001. I've kept that. There was a box set that came out with Rocky 1 to 4 originally, which was a weird way of doing it. Number 4 has... You can either watch the director's cut that came out around 2020, or you can just watch the original theatrical cut from 1985, both of which are in 4K. So that's fine. I'm more a fan just of the original version, to be fair. I think that the 2020 Drago versus Rocky versus Drago, Rocky 4, was interesting. Certainly interesting, and I can see why I made some of the changes, but I just think that the original was a better film, the original cut. So Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa, that's 5 and 6, came out a couple of years ago in 4K following the original release where it was just these. I don't know why they did it that way. Then you've got Creed 1, 2 and 3, they're all in 4K as well. So all of these are in 4K. Great that they've done that. Fairly definitive, and also the best format as well. Daylight, get my hands on it. Daylight, which is a decent film. Came out in the mid-90s, as did Copland. It was around about the same time. I'm due a rewatch of this, actually. I might even watch this tonight, I'm not sure. Very good film if you've not seen it. Judge Dredd, I think I had to get this imported. I don't know if this has actually come out in Blu-ray in the UK officially now. I had to get an import, but that was a few years ago, so that might have been fixed. Detox, not the best film. This was kind of when he was in his kind of dark phase in the early 2000s, where he was kind of more of an actor for hire. He gives out a good performance, and you can see the film is attempting to do something good, but I don't know, it didn't seem to work for me. Bullet to the Head, so this came out kind of in the aftermath of his Expendables, action star, comeback kind of era. I quite liked it, but I can see why it was a bit of a critical failure. Escape Plan, so this was the first film where it was Stallone and Schwarzenegger together, and it's a focus on them. Obviously, they'd been together in the Expendables movies before this, but this was one that more focused on them, and Arnie was in the film quite significantly as well. Really good film. And they did 2 sequels that are straight to video, neither of which have Schwarzenegger, but Stallone is in both. Not as much, they're kind of straight to video films, but they're not bad. They're okay. I quite liked them. I got this box set a few years ago, Cobra, which has since then had an Arrow 4K release. Assassins, not the biggest fan of that one. That had Antonio Banderas, not the best. Tango and Cash, amazing film. I'm hoping that gets a 4K release soon. I'm hoping that Arrow do something similar like they've done with a couple of these others. The Specialist, again, I'm not a massive fan of that one. Some of those kind of erotic thrillers from the 90s are just really cringy, but he was in amazing shape in that film. Seriously, I'm so jealous, but I'm too lazy to do the work, so really good anyway. Demolition Man as well is in there, but of course these are in 4K, so you can get these fairly recent releases from Arrow Video. Definitely recommend. Some of the Studio Canal ones. So we've got Cliffhanger, very nice in 4K. Lock Up as well, bit of an underrated one. Decent film. These need no introduction. You've got all of the Rambo movies in 4K. I had to get this one of the 2007 movie imported because I don't think you can get this on 4K in the UK, at least the extended cut anyway. Last Blood, which came out in 2019, decent film. For some reason, as far as I'm aware, you can't get the extended cut of that in the UK on physical media, which is a shame. So I've just got the normal theatrical cut there. The Tulsa King Series 1 and 2. I don't know why they haven't released Series 3 on Blu-ray yet. But I do have other options. I can get a dodgy Chinese copy if I want to, but I don't want to do that. But sometimes you have to when it's films that you just cannot officially own physically. Which brings me to my next few films. Samaritan, this is a bootleg copy. And it's a really good quality copy. I don't advocate for getting these. I just got tricked and bought it off eBay, thinking it was an original one, because look, it's got the 12 certificate on there as well and all that, but it's a bootleg. But it plays fine, so lucky me. Again, I don't advocate for buying bootleg movies. Similar to these as well, Alarum and Armour. These came out a couple of years ago. It's more of a Scott Eastwood film, is Alarum. They're both pretty good. They're not amazing, and Stallone's not in them massively. But again, those are bootlegs. They play just fine, but I don't advocate for doing that. I think you can actually buy them properly now as well. I should have waited. Again, I think I just bought them off eBay, not being any the wiser. Stop All My Mum Will Shoot. This film gets a lot of slack. It's a PG movie. I like it. I've got fond memories of it, but I don't recommend the film itself necessarily. If you do like films like this, give it a watch. You might enjoy it, but whatever. Death Race 2000, that's the original film that Jason Statham was in the remake of in 2008. This is the original film from the 70s. Bit before he did Rocky, he's got a bit part in this as well. Paradise, Alley and Fist on DVD. Those are films that he made, I think that was between Rocky 1 and 2. They're okay, they're interesting. Nighthawks, very good film, very underappreciated film, gritty cop thriller. Rutger Hauer is the bad guy in it. I think that's one of his early English spoken movies that he did. He's a very good villain and it's a very good film. I always remember my mother used to like this film and she wasn't a Stallone fan. Escape to Victory, I need to give this a rewatch. I've not watched it in years, I can barely remember it, but I remember it being pretty good anyway. Over the Top, I've got a 4K of this coming fairly soon because it got re-released fairly recently in 4K and it was really expensive, like £35 or something. I thought, I'm not paying that because I'm not the biggest fan of this film. I like it enough to have it on DVD, but now they've re-released it for a much more reasonable price. So I've got that coming later this month. I think that comes out this month. Get Carter, remake of the Michael Caine original. This is a film that was underappreciated when it came out, but in more recent years, especially with The Tulsa King coming out, it's found a bit of a new audience because similar sort of character to what he plays in The Tulsa King. It's almost like this is a character that he played before he got locked away in kind of prelude to the Tulsa King series. But pretty good film. I rewatched it at the beginning of the year, having not watched it in a long time, and I actually liked it. So I think it got a bit of stick at the time when it came out, maybe because the standard has been lowered for modern movies. So when you go back and watch these films that were underappreciated at the time, you kind of have a new level of appreciation for them. On that note, maybe I need to rewatch this because I don't remember this film being all that good, but I haven't watched it in probably 10 or maybe even 15 years, so I need to give this one a rewatch. That's it. That's my Stallone DVD, Blu-ray and 4K collection. So he seems to be doing quite well anyway. I saw him at the Kennedy Center Awards, and he was at the White House as well, and he was getting some kind of Lifetime Achievement Award with a few other people. And he didn't look in the best shape, but I understand it's because he'd had some surgery on his back. And when you have something like that done, it can really mess you up and just run you down. So I was a little bit worried about him then, but I've seen him in more recent times. He seems very positive. He seems very full of life for his age. I reckon he's going to be with us for a long time. I reckon he'll see 100, I really do. Not just because he's big and strong in general, but he's very healthy as well. Again, you look at somebody like Schwarzenegger. I know he's had heart issues. I'd like you to see him see 100, but I do kind of worry about him a little bit sometimes because I know he's had a few issues with that in the past with heart surgery and so on. Whereas Stallone, I think, legitimately is in good health and fitness. He's in fact, I'm going to play a video. This was from a couple of days ago because it was the 4th of July in the USA. Well, it was the 4th of July here as well. What a coincidence. But you know what I mean. It was 4th of July celebrations in the USA, and Stallone is very patriotic in a great way. And he did a video just saying happy 4th of July everyone, and you can see from the video he's very healthy and he's very full of spirit and life, which is great.
I want to wish this country a happy 250th anniversary. America is the finest. I remember when Rocky came out on the 200th anniversary, and it was a miracle. I never expected it, but only in this country can something like that occur. So I'm incredibly grateful. It's provided me an amazing wife, amazing children, and an amazing belief that miracles can happen in America. So keep punching.
So, I feel like I've covered a lot of ground here anyway. As I say, Stallone is somebody to me who I feel like he's always been with me throughout my young early adult life. I say young early adult, I'm talking about maybe like 12 13 years old kind of thing. That's a child technically, legally speaking, sorry. Bit dodgy way of looking at it otherwise, but you know what I mean. From my formative years, let's just put it that way. I think that he was somebody that I've always kind of had there as an icon, really. Obviously it's important to have like father figures and so on growing up, and it's just unfortunate that a lot of people do have to kind of rely on movie stars and rock stars and all this kind of stuff to kind of look to them. But whether or not you're in a deficit in that regard, or whether or not it's just an extra added bonus, Stallone is definitely somebody that I think has really kind of boosted a lot of young men's sense of being and sense of, well, strength, not just physically but emotionally, mentally and spiritually. He's definitely somebody who, not so much like Bruce Lee, who was into philosophy and so on, but he's definitely got something in his movies that he's written, obviously that's an important factor to this, that has really helped a lot of people, particularly through difficult times. And a lot of people had difficult times during childhood as well. I know I certainly did, and that's by no means anything out of the ordinary. It's very common, it's very relatable. And I do remember Stallone is somebody that when I was growing up, definitely was just there as something that was a positive, just a positive influence, even if it's just an actor on a TV screen. It's definitely something that stays with you anyway. So I can't think of anything else really to say. Like I say, he's getting on a bit, but I do think he'll be not just around for a long time, but I think he's going to continue making movies and TV shows and just doing stuff in general, and having, whether it's just limiting things to just making appearances at events maybe in later years. I'm hoping that he sticks with it anyway, because a lot of people really relate to his work and the man himself, and just really grateful that we've got people like him in an era particularly where we don't have movie stars being produced as they once were, which is really unfortunate. But maybe the good times will return. Maybe someday we will have another era like we did in the 80s, where masculinity isn't scorned like it is now and is celebrated, and you have good examples like this to follow. Thank you very much for watching.
I need Spanish lessons, no question about it, right away. Enrolling tomorrow. I'm very, very proud to be here. I didn't expect this, but I'll just keep it short and sweet, because there's no such a thing as a speech too short. When I did Rocky, if you remember, the first image was a picture of Jesus, and it says Resurrection AC Club. I found a church that had been converted to a boxing ring. So the image pans down from Jesus onto Rocky being hit. And at that moment, he was a chosen person, and that's how I began the journey. Something was going to happen. This man was going to go through a metamorphosis and change lives, just like President Trump. We are in the presence of a really mythical character. I love mythology. And this individual does not exist on this planet. Nobody in the world could have pulled off what he pulled off, so I'm in awe. And I'll just say this, and I mean it. When George Washington defended his country, he had no idea that he was going to change the world. Because without him, you can imagine what the world would look like. Guess what? We got the second George Washington. Congratulations!